Order at 1:30. Please make sure your phone is on mute. Speak into the microphone. When called upon, give your name. And roll call will start. John Rocha,
Present.
Janie Evans,
Present.
Debbie Savawini,
Here.
Sandy Griffith,
Present.
Deborah Miller,
Present.
Tom Benson. Is Tom on Zoom? And lastly, Council Liaison Clark Tenney.
Clark Tenney is actually, Councilmember Tenney's out of town this week.
Okay.
And I did want to introduce our new Community Development Director, Kirby Sneidman. He's here, and I'm just going
Oh.
to have him do a little welcome.
And also, Tom is on Zoom. He's connecting to audio, just so you know.
Well, hello.
Well,
My name
hello.
is Kirby Sneidman. I'm the new Community Development Director for the City of Prescott. And maybe I could just introduce myself a little bit to the group, if that's okay?
Yeah.
Please do.
Okay, I'll just take a couple minutes. I am from East Texas originally. I come from a big family of 10 kids. And I have about 38 nieces and nephews as of now. So, you know, we're a big family. And well, when I graduated high school in Texas, I had a few options to go different places, but the best option, because we couldn't afford, you know, it was based on what we could afford, was to go to Utah and to go to BYU, because, you know, my family's affiliated with that. Surprisingly affordable. So I left Texas, went to Utah, got a degree in business and biology, and took a couple years break to spend a couple years in England, living in mostly London, but East Anglia. Came back, went to work in the private sector for a couple years, and my plan was always a business degree, an MBA. But then I realized I got some good advice from a few people who said, you know, why don't you pursue something you're passionate about? And while I was working in the private sector in the ag industry, because we have some family ties to ag, while I was doing that, I was traveling so many different states, especially in the Rust Belt. And what I saw was just how different between the cities that are doing well in America and the towns and cities that are doing poorly, what they look like. I mean, a lot of people, especially in the West, we're fortunate because things are growing, things are good, and it's not always as easy to see the struggling side of America. But I got to see all those places as I traveled and was just amazed by what a difference there is between communities that have something going for them and those that don't, and the decisions that they make, how those affect their residents and their citizens. So that really inspired me to get really involved in urban planning. And I went back and got my master's degree in urban planning. I started working as a consultant with a large bank, with a team of municipal consultants, and then later took a promotion to a different company out of Texas. Between those two consulting positions, I worked in over 15 different states, in over 100 different cities and counties on 200 different types of projects dealing with public finance, urban planning, utilizing CDBG funds for projects, community development, a lot of different projects. One of the things I started to notice was that what I felt the people that were best in the industry had both public and private experience. And at the time, there was somebody who said, hey, we're working on a city project. We could use somebody that's got some private experience. So why don't you come? I did. I ended up working for a few years there, and then I got recruited. A former client in Texas wanted me to come down in Texas and be the director there in South Texas. As you're aware, there's a lot of challenges along the Rio Grande Valley in Texas with poverty, and so did a lot with community development there and CDBG funds that the Fed sent that helped us with a lot of projects that we were working on in our community there. And then that led to this opportunity here. When I was looking for another opportunity, I wanted to be in a place where I felt like the experience that I've had in the past could help. Also, I have family down in the valley, so that makes it nice. And after living in South Texas for a few years with 120 plus degree summers with humidity, I realized, you know what, it'd be nice to spend some time in a place where the weather, in my opinion, is perfect. So that was a big draw for me here, but I've been to Prescott before, and I love the community, so I'm happy to be here and serve it. And the job that y'all have, working with our staff to make sure that these funds are utilized correctly and utilized well is a very important job. Even though the funds are not millions of dollars, every dollar counts when we're talking about those in our community who are underserved or who need a hand up. So I really appreciate the work you do here, and if there's anything I can do to make your job easier or Michelle's job easier, that's what I see my job as. So happy to be here, happy to serve.
Thank you.
Kirby, thank you very much for that. I think you see who we are by name-wise, and I have to compliment you on your bolo tie.
Nice.
I'm part of the rodeo,
Oh, very
and
good.
bolo ties have come and gone because they've gone to scarves and different kind of stuff. But thank you for that western part of Texas.
You're welcome.
Is it Kirby?
That's right.
Okay, Kirby, got it. Can-
All right. Any questions from members?
I have a curiosity question.
You're on.
How big was the town, city in South Texas, and roughly what were the CDBG funds like there as far as amount goes? Just out of curiosity, because I've never been able to ask that.
Yeah, I was working for the city of Laredo, which is the 10th largest city in Texas, about 300,000 people.
300 grand, okay.
And as you know, the funds that are sent are not just based on size, but also the size of the community in need. So we had, some of it changed with what we got with COVID, but it was over $1 million that we were working with. And then some special funds that came through. If you want to see more of a detailed breakdown of how those funds go out, I mean, I'm not sure it would help you much because there's not much we can do about what the federal government decides to give us. But yeah, a big part is the two big components are the size of the city and then, of course, the size of the community that the money serves.
So you mentioned, Kirby, 300,000 in population. Any idea on how many folks under that poverty line? Or what were the folks being served? LMI?
Yeah, it was fairly high. We had about 45% under
Wow.
the federal poverty rate. Yeah, it was fairly
Wow.
high.
And it's the
I mean, as you can
10th largest-
imagine, Laredo being literally, the home I owned was literally like 4 blocks from the
Yeah,
border,
yeah.
from the river, because I lived downtown so I could walk to work, bike to work. We're, the first stop. And often we're the first stop for those that are coming as immigrants who maybe necessarily didn't have a tie. Because a lot of the immigrants that come, they've got families somewhere in the country where they want to go and get a job. But if they can't, and they don't have, and they have limited funds, well, as soon as they make it in, oh, that's their first stop. So sometimes it's the hardest hit. But what's really beautiful is, because I would go across on the Mexican side all the time, especially when I was shopping for prescription drugs, like the price difference is crazy. We would get tourists who would come in for that. But going across the side, genetically, they're the same people. But to look at the difference in poverty, I mean, the Mexican side, obviously, a lot more poor.
Sure.
So what's really cool is to see the people that were struggling in Laredo, to see that it wasn't necessarily generational, that when people made it over, because they're hardworking people and there are opportunities in America, that they would move up over time. So in other words, it's not always the case, but if you took that 45% poverty rate and you broke it down by generations, how many generations have you been in America? What you'd find is the majority of those are first generation. Mm-hmm. And then as people are in longer in the United States, in Texas, they move up, they move out of the poverty, they get educated, they get a high school education, they have opportunities for college. So the American dream, in my opinion, is still working. Needs some work, but it's still working. And you can see that, just the difference between poverty on one side of the river and the other. Sorry, that was probably a long
No,
answer.
that's
but-
enlightening. I appreciate you sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's good.
Anything else?
Yeah, really good, really
Kirby?
good. Glad you're here.
Glad to have you, Kirby,
Great
for
to be
sure.
here.
Welcome to CDBG.
Thanks a lot.
Okay,
I have another meeting, so I might have to leave.
we understand. We do. All right, Michelle, discussion and action items.
Yes, so the next item is to approve the minutes of the August 17th, 2022 Citizen Advisory Committee.
And you've read your minutes. I need a motion to accept those minutes.
Madam Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of the August 17th, 2022 Citizen Advisory Committee meeting.
Second,
I'll second it.
Deborah Miller, all those in favor?
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Our minutes are accepted. Michelle, staff report.
Michelle?
Yes, Tom.
Now, this is Tom. Before you go, I just want you to make sure I'm here. I've missed the roll call, but I'm here for the meeting.
Great, thank you. Glad you could join us, Tom. Thank you for being here.
Okay.
Okay, so the next item on the discussion action items is a staff report on the 2023 CDBG program timeline. And you all have a staff report in your packet that talks about where we're at. So as you are aware, we will be kicking off the 2023 annual program next week when we have our needs workshop. So you all should have received an invitation to the next Wednesday's meeting. We will be having a needs workshop right here in City Hall. And we will be also having it on Zoom. So it's just like all the meetings that we do. We have both in person and we have the Zoom meeting. So as you all know, we get about $250,000 per year in CDBG funds annually. What I have in this staff report for you today is actually the regular applications. So over the past few meetings, we've gone into a lot of discussion about how to use up that CARES Act funds that we have. And you've reviewed the application for the Prescott CARES Phase 2, and we talked about that, and I've made recommended changes to the application, the timeline. This is what you have in your packet today is actually the regular traditional CDBG applications. So again, the timeline is listed on your staff report. Nothing has really changed radically from 2022 to 2023. We start with our needs workshop in October, and then we open applications in December. We have another more detailed application workshop in December for people that are interested in applying and aren't familiar with the application process. So next Wednesday is just a big kind of 30,000-foot overview of what the program is, and people throw out ideas about projects, and we help them to know if those are eligible activities or not. Then in December, folks who want to apply come back, and I get way more in depth about how to apply, what does the application look like, what are the things that you all, as reviewers of the applications, what you're looking for, and how to have a successful application for CDBG. So I won't go into a huge amount of detail on the application because it's pretty similar. I haven't changed anything significantly. Other than, again, we talked about this, about the unique identity ID is a new thing. They've gone away with the DUNS, and they now have a UEI. So that language is different. It'll talk about how to get your unique identity ID, unique entity ID, rather than a DUNS. But I would love to open it up to questions. If you have any questions about the timeline or the application or the workshop, I would be happy to answer any questions.
Sandy?
Thank you, Chair. Michelle, I don't have any questions on the timeline, but I do have some on the application.
Okay.
So the public service, if we could start with that one first.
Okay.
The number 16, the project narrative, there's no character limit for that particular question like there is on the construction application.
Okay, thank you for noting that. So I will add that text in there. So there is a limit behind on my end as the designer of the survey, but I will add the text so that the viewer, the applicant, can see the text limit.
I could see it on the construction, but the public service didn't show up. On the public service, question number 26 and 27, we ask, was an audit of financial records obtained? And the same thing with 27, we say attach a copy of your current audit. Audits are extremely expensive, so I wonder if we shouldn't say a review, which does the same thing, but it's not nearly as detailed and in-depth as an audit. So
Thank you, Madam Vice Chair. That's a very good question. And that is, sometimes people are a little bit confused about this, so I think I could explain it a little bit more clearly and say, you're not required to submit an audit. You can do either or. You can do a financial review. Most agencies don't get a full audit every year
Correct.
because they're very expensive. And then they could also, instead of an audit, they could provide a income balance sheet, income statement and balance sheet. So we don't require both. So I can clarify that.
That was my other concern. I think that we should require an income statement and balance sheet. Those are easy, they're done every month. Every nonprofit and public service person should be doing those. The reviews are always a year behind in the arrears. But I feel that an income statement and balance sheet is critical. But I'd like to
yeah.
hear from my fellow.
No, I agree, because I'm actually thinking about when we're reviewing the applications themselves, I think even maybe Tom, or maybe it was Tom or Bob, but we've had some discussion about those financials being either really old or being like a whole year behind. And some of them are 40-page audits, reports. Some of them are single-page P&Ls. So I'm thinking I would feel comfortable reviewing essentially like a last year P&L balance sheet and a year-to-date P&L balance sheet. Don't you think, for what we review? Or just specifying that for making it as easy as possible if someone's submitting that type of report.
Let me just tag on, Michelle, this for you. Does the CDBG gurus that send us all this information, do they condense it anymore? Or are we in step with what they request to pull this money from the feds? Because we're sort of coming up with something on our own. What's acceptable?
So this is completely up to us
Okay.
to manage, and this is very best practices for grant applications or any kind of agencies that's applying for funds is to have, an audit summary and the balance sheet. So we could definitely change it from and or to and.
Okay.
And I could clarify the language and say, we need John, you said year-to-date balance sheet, and then you said
Yeah, I mean, for my recommendation would be just seeing all of last year's.
all of last year.
All of last year's P&L and balance sheet, and then year-to-date. So if they're applying, so for example, they're putting in their applications in January, February. So we would want 2022 P&L and balance sheet for that whole, I mean, I guess it's so close to that year. I almost think if it should be,
They
they're
could-
not going to have much financials from January to February.
No, but they could do a balance sheet every month.
Yeah. I'm just saying for the P&L, just to get a good idea of how healthy
Right.
they are, you have to kind of compare it to something. So
Exactly.
can we do maybe the last 2 years P&L?
Last 2 years?
Yeah, right, because then if they're applying January or February, they're going to have 2022.
Right.
And then we probably want to have 2021, just to take a contrasting view of it.
Okay. Does Tom do you want to say anything about this on Zoom?
And
Okay,
we
he
lost
says
Tom.
no. You're on mute, but I could read your lips. And it says no, I don't have any comment.
Okay.
So yes, that's a great idea. Other questions?
I have one more, Madam Chair.
Sure.
And John. So under annual goals for number of households supported, on both the construction and the public service, we have a box that says homeless, but we don't,
What number is that?
well, they're different numbers. They're 18 and 19.
Okay.
So homeless is not on both questions, and I don't know if it needs to be. Because probably not on number 19, public service, because homeless wouldn't receive rental assistance, right? That's probably a criteria. Or rehab of existing units. I'm probably answering that myself, so homeless wouldn't go on that question.
It
Number
could,
19. Could it?
Madam Vice Chair, it could. So I think it's good to go back and take a look at it. And those are requirements that HUD makes
Okay.
us ask, but if you're working on a facility, say your construction application, and you're creating a facility that serves the homeless,
So
they
that-
would
okay.
mark how many homeless they're serving.
Perfect.
So it should be on both
Okay,
applications.
thank you. If you could look at that.
I will look at it. Thank you.
Goodbye, Mr. Snagman.
Thanks, Kirby. Can I
And
jump in real quick before we move on from the 26 one?
Yes.
Number 26, the last checkbox was an audit of financial records obtained annually or biannually. Is this relevant now, probably, to keep on there?
I have that same question on my
Yeah,
sheet.
just because it runs into the same ambiguity a little bit of like, well, I have to have all my books
Right.
audited to have, I don't know if I just feel like it
could-
maybe should be gone.
I could add some language as, is it audit or financial review done annually? So we clarify that we don't require annual auditing. We just need to know, do you look at your books once a year?
Okay.
Yeah,
And if that's the purpose of it, I think that's fair to put in there for sure.
yeah.
To
I
make
can
sure that-
clarify the language on that.
And then just one more thing, if you could just double check the character limits on the other boxes where you have to go in and write something.
Okay, I will do that.
Sandy's too busy. She's got to get
Okay.
efficient here on her time management.
I'm done.
She's like, let's not have novels, okay? Just get to the point. Okay.
Does any of the other board members have any questions on the applications for this year?
Nope.
No.
John does?
Yes. Do we, so when we're looking at and I wish I would have brought it with me because I wrestle with it every time we were reviewing based on that rubric that we get.
Correct.
Is that rubric established by HUD or
No.
is that internal for us?
Nope, that's up to us. We can change it if we'd like.
And the follow-up question was is the rubric ever shared, like with RFPs, IFBs, all this public ways of like bidding in the public sector? I've noticed that they give you kind of the rubric up front, like these are the things we're scoring you on. Do they get that at all in the application of what we're grading them on essentially for their application?
We actually
Yeah, I thought.
have not shared the rubric
it.
in the past, but we definitely could. I know Tom Benson has mentioned this before too. We could give them how the information's weighted. So the rubric says, 10 points to this area, 20 points to this area. So I could share that with them at the training in December. And then I do have people ask me for their scores after the fact. So after we make our decisions and everything is, decided upon and signed off on, it's like part of the public record, but I don't share people's names of who scored what. You all are assigned a number and you're anonymous. So, but if someone says, hey, Michelle, I want to do better next year, can I see my rubric? I will provide that for them.
that's
That's
fair.
excellent.
So I would just, I guess my point would be to share it on the application because that also makes it a lot more crisp and clear of what they're trying to convey to us. Sometimes we read those project narratives and I almost feel bad because they put like 4 paragraphs of things that we don't even grade them on. True. It's just like, ugh, if you would have just told me 3 sentences and just nailed this question, it would have helped you more than just confusing us or, so I think it's in an effort to just be transparent and give them the best shot to just, this is what we're grading you on, and so if you want to spend extra time on making this clear, then by all means do it so that you can get a better score. And that would just be my 2 cents, Madam Chair.
John, if you're asking for less descriptive information, is that going to change your vote because you don't have enough? You tend to think, this isn't quite enough for me to make a decision. 3 or 4 sentences, I would rather know what you're doing. And yes, I agree, they get into quite depth with it. Is that sort of our responsibility as members as to how deep you want to go? Or that organization applying, trying to condense it? Which do you want?
I don't think I worry too much about it being like they're kind of getting jibbed because they don't have enough information to put on there. I think it's more of a matter of being transparent with them to focus on the right things. And because, for example, RFPs and when you go and submit proposals to a city or a town, they're very specific of what's important to them. And I think that's also, in a way, respectful to the organization to say, we know that you're a nonprofit, your budget's not super fat, you're trying to be efficient as possible with your budget. The last thing we want to do is you putting in 40% of extra fluff in the application that we just don't. Because every time I sit there, and it's happened now twice, because I've had the privilege of doing it twice now, I always think like, man, it's like they're missing, I'm giving them this number instead of that number because they just missed to prove this, be clear about this point. But they shared about 80% of the other stuff that was super helpful, but I can't grade them on it. So it's just like I'm stuck. It's like, well, I know a lot of information about your organization. I love what you're doing. We want to empower you. But then I got a rubric here that tells me I'm grading you by these things here, period. So
That's exactly, I agree with you, John. I think the last time we looked at those applications, looked like somebody just took their organizational chart and plopped it into the project. It was like, I'm
Yeah, you're
sorry.
missing
I ca-
detail.
Yeah, I need, so.
So I have made a note to put the rubric into the training in December so that they can see it ahead of time.
are we good? And and that's why I'm kicking myself because I didn't bring it, but I don't think there's anything in the rubric that I feel compelled to change or do anything different. I just think it's a matter of showing
Trying to
them.
remember what it was too. I don't have it.
Madam Chair, I just wanted to back what John is saying. Since we have that ability for them to come to us after we receive it and we've reviewed it and they provide a presentation to us, I think if they know ahead of time what are the important scores to receive, if we have any questions, that opportunity for us to ask them is available. So if you feel like I'm not getting enough information on the most important part of the rubric, because we allow them to come and discuss it with us, and that could be another impetus for you, Michelle, to really get them to show up to do a presentation, to allow them that opportunity or afford them the opportunity to really clarify and hit the high notes of what we're looking for in the first place.
So if they can come and give a update, then do they go back and change the application to make it clearer?
So
Do that?
So the process, how it works is in October, we have a workshop, and that's open to everybody. And then in December, we have an application workshop that's open to everybody. And we go through how to apply, what are we looking for, what pitfalls to avoid, what really annoys the readers, what really annoys the people doing the scoring. And I will include the rubric. And then they have that whole month to work on it. They're free to call me and ask questions. And then on January 6th, they're due to the city. Then on January 18th, they present to you all again. But after they put their application in, that's kind of the end of their end. That their ability to edit it kind of stops. It stops, not kind of, it does stop. And then we move on, and you do your scoring. We do tour the sites if we have construction applications. And the goal is to get it all to city council by April.
Okay.
Can I ask from this board, any of you going to attend the October 19th?
I'm planning on
I
it.
think.
Yeah, I'm planning on it.
Clean up a little bit for you, John, and those people that are applying. And again, the questions that we're asking and so forth, you get a first blush with some of those people that will be applying for these few $1,000s. I would certainly hope you try to work around that because you don't see them again until about the middle of December. Okay.
Okay, I just wanted to summarize some more items about this that I didn't touch on. So to summarize the application, there's 6 sections. There's application deadlines, the organizational overview, project description, organizational capacity, project schedule and budget, and then the program organization. So when I give the rubric in December, I will say this application's not weighted. The organization overview is 20 points. The project description is 20 points. So I don't have that memorized, but I will have that in December. And then I wanted to clarify, these are the things that I've cleaned up based on kind of feedback I've heard from you and things that we've learned since last year. So the UEI instead of the done number. The project schedule, I've broken that down by quarter to make it clearer. The budget descriptions, I've clarified that, hopefully made it easier to understand, and A plus B equals C instead of being confusing. Clarified the procurement rules for the city. And then I did limit the construction applications to 1 year because the 5-year plan, I can't believe, it ends in 2024. So now we're taking applications that go from 2023 to 2024. We have to update our consolidated plan. And that means the priorities might change. So I didn't feel comfortable having 3-year applications for projects because your priorities, the city's priorities might change in 2024. So that's the only thing that's new and different. Any last questions or comments on the applications?
Madam Chair, be interesting to see what the rest of the committee thinks, but on the construction, purchases from 5,000 to 25,000 will require 3 written quotes. 25 to 50 will require 3. It's very difficult to even get 2 quotes in the market that we're in. And maybe purchases 5,000 to 25, we could say will require 2 or 3 written quotes, give them an option, because it's not happening out there. It's difficult.
It's difficult.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, could I make a comment to that?
Absolutely.
So I think we should clarify that do your best. I can't change the language because it is a city procurement
Okay.
policy that's codified. So, but I could put a quotation, we understand the market's tough right now. Do your best. If you can only get, and sometimes it's a very specialized item.
Right.
There's only one vendor in the community that does it. If that's the case, when I bring something to council, I explain to council in my memo, I say, we tried to get quotes, but we found out there's only one specific agency that does this kind of work, and that's why we have one bid, one quote.
That would be fantastic.
Yes, we will clarify.
And that was just for the 5,000 to 25? That we're saying that, or for all
You
of
know,
them?
I think they all should maybe
Just have that same
clear,
text?
yes.
Yeah.
So, Madam Chair, can I ask a question, please?
Janie?
So what you're saying is that the applicant is responsible to provide the quotes? Okay, thank you.
Yes, and this is city policy. So if it's over $50,000, I have to do actually a sealed bid, and I do that through the city clerk's office. And the agency who would be the subrecipient of the grant funds, they come and they participate, but I'm the one that's soliciting, and I have to publish it, and has to go into the newspaper twice. And I do get calls when we have bids for CDBG projects from people who got the final bid. I mean, they want to know, and I have to make that public and everything.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we're finished with the draft. Let's move on to the 2021 caper.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee. The next staff report is on the 2021 Consolidated Annual Performance Evaluation Report, or the CAPER. We try not to use acronyms, but that's a HUD acronym, and it's much easier to roll off the tongue than the long name. As you know, we're required to do the CAPER report every year. On the previous year, it's due 90 days after the end of the program year. So we collect annual reports from all of our subrecipients. We ask questions based on what we have to report into HUD so that the data flows. We write a PDF version, and then we have a 30-day public review and comment period, which is going on right now, that ends October 15th. So the public review and comment period has been going on since September 13th, when we would have had our CAC meeting, until this weekend. And then any comments I receive, I haven't received public comment as of yet, but any comments I receive, including all of your comments today, will go into the report that I put into HUD on the activities from 2021. So I have attached the CAPER. It's pretty much flows with how the reporting that I have to do on the HUD website. But there's an overview of the 5-year goals. There's an overview of the expenditures, the families served, the racial ethnic components of those served. You can see in the report that I do add charts. So the reason why I like having online reports for the CAPER is because we are able to download. I'm just going to skip to the CAPER here. We are able to download data from the electronic reports, and we are able to create charts. So the overview for 2021 is we had about 251,000. About 37,000 was set aside for public service, 163 set aside for construction, about 50,000 for administration. So part of the funds are set aside so that I can work here, and that helps me manage the program. And then we did have those COVID dollars, so I did give a report on how much COVID dollars we spent, 164,000. Roughly, we had 20 small and micro businesses served, and 18 low-income residents who'd been negatively impacted by the pandemic got help with the COVID money. And then there's a summary of each different project, all their activities that they did. They are required to submit a narrative and numbers on how they've reported, how the activities, what were the challenges that they had over the year, were they impacted by the pandemic, et cetera, et cetera. So I won't go into deep detail on all the narrative, but I would like to highlight a few of the charts and things that have changed from 2020 to 2021. One thing obviously is we had higher participation. The pandemic 2020 was hard on a lot of our agencies, and I think they had more participation in 2021. We had we had several additional participants in the program year. We always serve around 1,000 participants in the CDBG program. So when you think about, after you take the administration costs out of the CDBG pot, to serve over 1,000 residents with about $200,000 is a pretty good outcome. I think it's a good reach for a small amount of money. So we have to report CR10, which is on the racial ethnic composition, and we served approximately 1,840 individuals with direct services and improvements to public facilities, homeless shelters, and transitional housing. The total number, and I'm trying to get to the charts. I apologize. This is probably making people dizzy, but and I'll go back to this kind of big picture 5-year overview. But here's where I am right now is this chart here, and this shows how the services are up from the year before, and that's to be expected because of the pandemic. So in 2020, our number was approximately 1,300, and in 2021, approximately 1,800. So that's a good chunk of people, additional people to be served. We always put the census data, so we're working with 2020 census data now, and we can put projections on how the communities are going to grow over the years. And our estimated growth rate is around 1.5%. So by the year 2030, it's expected that Prescott would be about 52,000 residents. The median age of Prescott residents is 59.1 years old, which is an increase of 53 years old in 2010. We have 11.9% of population under 18, and 38% are 65 and older. One of the significant things is that the age group of 65 years and older has increased 85% over the last 20 years, which is quite remarkable. And then the charts just go into, talking about population by age. It's the 2008 ACS demographic data and 2020 population data, but you can see where we got those numbers from. And then we also required to report on race and ethnicity, so I download the data and put it into little charts for you all to be able to read more easily. And the demographics, just like the demographics of the program, it shows an increase in the minority population served. So the Hispanic population was up by about 143 people, and the African Americans served went from 19 to 52. The residents served under the CDBG program are slightly more diverse than the overall population. We are at a minority population in Prescott of about 9% overall. And those who identify as ethnically Hispanic are about 15% of the population served. So let's see here. Again, the total spent, the resources made available, and again, this chart is required. We have to tell how much was made available by HUD, $251,857. How much we spent, you obviously notice that's much higher because we're spending dollars that we received previous years as well. So most of our construction projects take more than 1 year to complete. We were still serving people with the CARES Act money. So people might say, well, why does it say you spent more than you received? It's because we're still spending down dollars from previous program years. The affordable housing, one thing I noticed is, again, as we talked about with the application, I think I need to clarify kind of the homelessness, the non-homeless, the special needs for folks, to say that it's the overall number of residents, and if you don't serve homeless folks, that's okay. You can just put a 0 in there. I think we need to tweak the question so that the applicants realize it only relates to, housing-related projects. Again, there's a lot of narrative. I'm not going to go over all of the narrative. I just wanted to highlight some of the charts, population changes, the 2020 census data, because this is the first time you're really getting to hear from us the new census data. And it worked out nicely because, I have told you I'm working on that analysis of impediments to fair housing report, which I'll need to bring to you in the future. We used 2020 census data for that. So it was nice because I got to pull the data from the analysis report, and put it into this. So I'm kind of killing two birds with one stone, working on multiple reports at the same time. So here's some pictures at the end. The pictures are the most telling. We finished the warming kitchen, the Boys and Girls Club. This was 2 years of funding combined because the bids, again, came in double what we expected. They did a really nice job. You'll notice this is for youth, so there's no cooking stoves or things like that because they're going to be just warming things. They're not going to be cooking. Brand new fridge, floors. They put in this serving wall, so the students are going to learn how to cook, and they can actually serve the other students, the other young people being served there after school and out of school time. The launch pad is completely built out, and this has been one of the most remarkable projects I've ever been involved with. This is a 2-story teen center. This was a pole barn. When I started working on CDBG, this was a big white empty pole barn that had a kind of a little stage, and it had a few old video games and some places for musical instruments and things like that, but it wasn't a completely built out center. There's a coffee shop where students work and learn workforce development skills. There's a performance space, a pool table. There's different rooms for students. So there's a game room, there's music room. This is the outside, so it still looks like a pole barn. But they had a big kickoff, I think it was in April, where we all went and got to see the final, version of how the funds were spent. They also have a community room that's available to the community for if you want to rent it or you have a retreat for work or something like that. They have a nice community room on the second floor with views of Thumb Butte and nice tables and everything. They have spaces for mental health counseling, for tutoring. So we're very happy and proud that that project is completed.
Michelle,
Yes.
what's the timeline on the launch pad?
The launch pad, I think over a 3-year period, they had applied, and they had gotten smaller, grants over a 3-year period. They did have to apply every year in order to get the funds. This is some photos from the interior and exterior repairs at Agape House. So these split packs, we're seeing a lot of these being used to do air conditioning, heating and cooling, improving the quality of the kitchens in the transitional housing for people who were formerly homeless.
Was this the 8-apartment unit?
Yes, 9 units.
Project 9?
9 units.
Where is this at roughly?
It is on Alto Street, 122, 124 South Alto. It is, if you go down Gurley, and it's up the hill a little bit. Do you know where the radio station is up there?
Oh, yeah.
It's right next to the
Oh,
radio
got it.
station.
Okay.
So yeah, this is an ongoing project. We've been working with them for several years, and it's a phased project. So as they get their funds, they write new applications, scope of service. They were funded multiple years. The indoor, outdoor work, this is more the indoor. They started with external improvements, and now they're moving towards more internal. So you'll see things like bathroom repairs. And they have a thank you wall where they have for all the people who have contributed, and there's a thank you community development block grant brick there. They made me stand by it. Arizona Serve, we were happy to partner with them this year, and this is just an example of some of the, visuals work really well with narrative as well to tell a story of who was served and what they did with their grant money.
Yeah, that is cool.
I really like the visuals and the storytelling. And then Launchpad also has a workforce development program, much, much smaller allocation to the project launch, which you've seen the workbook that comes in with that, but it's a much smaller grant, but to do training for the students and placement into internships. So here's one of their classes, and this is the coordinator teaching the students. And then there's the students that were in Project Launch. So that concludes my presentation on CAPER. I wanted to keep it as brief as I could. It's a lot of information, but please ask me any questions you have.
We're good. All right.
I believe Debbie has a question.
I do have a question, but it's just kind of an information question. I noticed by the population increases that Prescott Valley and Chino Valley are really having a greater increase in population. Do they have CBDG funds also? Do you know?
It's a very good question. So they, I believe they participate in the competitive. So we're what's called an entitlement community, where we have an allocation that's decided by the feds by the formula, depending on the size and the needs, and then we just get it. And then there's other communities who compete for funds, I think, through the state. Like, I've seen Prescott Valley put ads in the newspaper, just like we have to put our notices when we're going to do something. Well, they'll say, we are proposing to fund da-da-da-da-da with CDBG. Here's our public notice. So I know they do get some CDBG.
Curious.
Yep, that's a great question. I'm just not sure if it's who it's through the state, or, it's not
Interesting.
the same pot that we're getting. They are eligible for entitlement dollars, I know that.
How does that work with Chino Valley? So they don't seem like they have the entitlement one. What's the other way of doing it? You mentioned competitive. Is that like literally submitting a project to CD?
This NACOG runs a CDBG program as well. So they are kind of like the coordinators of the funds for the Northern Arizona. And if you're not a entitlement community, you can apply through that pot of money. So Chino Valley and other smaller communities, if they want to apply, they go through that. And there's probably other direct state funds that they can apply for that directly to the state. So there's a cutoff for the population, that you have to have a certain population, and then they kick you into this pot, this
Like to
entitlement.
qualify for entitlement? I know the equation's probably ridiculous, but for
The formula?
Yeah, the formula, but I'm assuming most of it has a lot to do with probably the total population and then the LMI population within that population. That's probably right. as
I
far
would
as-
imagine. I've never seen the formula.
Kind of like Kirby said. essentially.
Exactly. So I haven't seen the formula specifically, but I just like you, I think that they take into consideration the size of the population and the amount of people living in poverty and challenges that the community faces.
I would think there's some special consideration for, like, say, that city like Loretto in Texas, because the numbers don't add up, that if they had, even at 45% of folks living in poverty in that city, $1 million compared to, say, 15-ish here, 15%, I don't know, what is that? Where are we at right now roughly on low median income or LMI?
That's a good question. I don't have that answer rate. It's not part of this report, the city's overall poverty rate, but we will put that into our the analysis of impediments report that
Oh,
we're
will be in
coming
there.
up with. And that'll be part of the census data that we pull down. This data is more related to like who we served and the diversity of the population, but I don't believe that the percent of poverty is
It's in the consolidated, though, 5-year.
yes, in
I
the
remember it there,
consolidated
yeah.
plan as well.
It's just because it's a big jump, like two something to $1 million, and then some probably. But I'm just curious what that formula is like.
Okay, getting back to Prescott.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry.
Back to Prescott.
And this is why she's the chairman.
So,
Rein us in.
announcements, what do you got?
Okay, the last item on the agenda is announcements. We have like I said, I'm working on this analysis of impediments report. Our intern is off to college, so now I'm left all by myself, and I'm hoping to get it to you soon, because it's not a super time-sensitive thing. The CAPER is more of a time-sensitive thing, so I just put my priority on the work to the CAPER, because I have to get that in. So you'll be seeing that coming up. The workshop coming up in October, that's next Wednesday at 1:30, same time, same place, same channel. I will put a notice of possible quorum, so don't worry about if we have more than 3 people, 4 people here, that's fine. And then I wanted to bring to your attention, we have been made aware that the CDBG contract with HUD is going to be put back on the council agenda. I'm not sure which council meeting it's going to be, possibly October 25th, I've been told. And so that is because the mayor has some concerns about the language in the contract with HUD. So as soon as I know for sure when it's going to go on the agenda, I will let you all know right away so you can participate in that discussion.
Madam Chair, I have a question related to that. Michelle, is that just for discussion at that meeting, or will they have a vote on it at that meeting? Do you know?
I believe they will discuss the HUD language for the contract and that they will be voting again on the CDBG program.
Thank
This
you.
is a pretty big meeting in order to get funding to us, correct?
Right, so
Sitting out there without his consent or signature.
Correct.
Until that clears.
yes, Madam Chair has been a little bit more involved in this discussion because I've reached out to her and just kind of explained some of the situation. But we did vote on this in April, and they voted 7-0 to approve the program. There are some concerns that have come up since, and that's going to be expressed at a future council meeting.
So are we talking about the contract that literally binds the city with CDBG and our existence and all of this stuff? Okay, good. I just want to make sure I was understanding it at the very top level
Yes.
of what that means. I didn't know if there was any other
And
contract.
Michelle sort of highlights some of the mayor's issues as to, he also was one of our liaison before he was the mayor. And then the next step up, when this came through, he had some questions. And we had a meeting, and we had the city attorney there, attended that, explained everything was exactly where it was supposed to be with HUD and such. But in reading, the mayor found some things that he was not comfortable with. Close?
Yes. very good explanation.
Trying
And
to take the dime
so,
off of you.
So I'm
Yes.
assuming we're not able to know what these things are.
That
I don't think
would
they-
be you and him if
Yes.
you chose to do that.
Until it becomes public domain at the meeting of when they're releasing it.
And now it's not just his signing, now it will be the council who will make a vote on that. She tried and tried not to go that far.
Sure.
We had meetings with him, and you've got a window this money is sitting in, and if you don't get the paperwork to him and
Right.
have it done, you don't get it, and we're sort of held.
Yeah, okay.
So how close are we to that window shutting down based on having to come back and council review and go back? Do we know?
so
Just out of curiosity.
the window closing down, I don't know that there's a window. So the grant agreement has not been signed. In order to receive the funds that we've approved for 2022, we have to have a signed grant agreement. That's not been signed, but I don't know that there's a cutoff if I have a certain amount of time to get that in. I haven't heard from HUD that they're gonna, say we need to know by this date. They would like to have the grant agreement, they've asked me, is it signed, and I don't have it yet.
2022 program year?
The 2022 program
So
year.
that was 6 months ago when this was all approved. So HUD is asking you, where is this document?
Right, so this is such a long process
I know.
because it's a public program and I have to be so transparent. And so it takes like 6 months to get this approved. We didn't actually get the document from HUD for our signature until the end of September.
Okay,
So you're looking
all
at,
right,
it's
okay.
October 15th, or what is today, the
Yeah, it's
12th?
like 2 weeks out, yeah.
Okay, so.
So we have this now, it takes them, like typically it's August, September when we actually get that formal agreement. And then I backdate the contracts to July 1 because the program goes July to June.
So now is there going to be an additional delay once this goes back into HUD? Is it going to take X amount of months to get it back from them?
I don't think so. Once it goes back signed, then it goes and they start plugging the
Okay, all
money
right,
in.
okay, I didn't know if it had to start all over again.
And just so you're aware, Madam Vice Chair, we've been doing everything the same that we always do
Right.
with all the contracts and the environmental reviews. Everything has been the same, full speed ahead. It's just that this last piece, there's some concerns. And so that's just to make you aware. We'll let you know when it gets on the agenda, if it does.
And again, the meetings I've been to, the conversations, they're handling it the best they can. They were hoping that agreement would be signed a week ago, and he just not going to sign it.
So what would end up happening if it doesn't go through? So if the contract's not agreed upon with the council?
So if the council decides to
For
not
this
accept the
application,
funds,
yeah, for
right?
this
That's the
application.
council decision. I'm the program person and I can't, advocate or say what to do or what the community should think, but I can just say that it's up to the legislative body to decide if they accept these funds or not. And they did in April. They said they wanted to move forward with all these projects. So now we're going to have that discussion again. And the discussion, the concerns that the leadership has about particular language that the federal government requires in the signing of the grant agreement.
Yeah, I understand that being a concern. I guess for me, it's a very bad place to be as a city to go, here's all the applicants, here's how we're gonna go and run this whole process and award people funds and go and better
then
this
go,
community
"Oh,
and then be
sorry."
like,
That's what she's been doing.
sure. Oh, I don't doubt that. I just think it sucks
Constantly
to,
to get this done. That's why I said,
Right.
they even brought the city attorney in to go over the language.
yeah. I guess my point was saying if it doesn't get signed, I understand that that's not receiving the funds for the program year 2022, but I would assume at that point too, it puts a pause or stops a process for 2023.
Oh, yeah.
So all this whole timeline and everything we're looking at could, in theory, also just stop, because why keep moving forward if we don't even have last year's funds ready to receive?
So
Madam Chair, can I ask a question?
You bet.
Michelle, how many years has the city of Prescott received and approved CBDG funds?
Great question, Deborah, Member Miller. So we're coming up on a 20-year anniversary. We started in 2003. 2023 will be the 20-year anniversary of the CDBG program in the city of Prescott. And we typically, the mayor signs all the grant agreements. That's been the past practice. That's, but we have new leadership. So if there's new questions and concerns coming up.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Wait a minute.
I
Last
have a
question, so we
question.
move on.
So as a member of this committee, there are certain parameters that we can function in. Like I can't call John and talk to him about this.
Right.
Can I call a councilman and talk to them? Can I call and be an advocate to the different?
Yes.
Okay.
It is an individual. So if you're on a public board, it's always important that you say, I'm calling as a citizen, I'm not representing the CAC, because you would have to get all these people up here's approval on whatever you're going to say. So you don't go into to electeds and say, I'm representing the Citizen Advisory Committee, unless everyone here saw what you were going to say and said, go for it.
Okay.
Right. But
Just
it's your civic
As a
right
citizen,
to
I
talk
can
to your electeds if you wish.
Okay, the possible, that would be something you'd put on your calendar with a question mark, 25th.
Possibly October 25th.
That is a question mark.
Question mark, and as soon as we know if it's going to be on the agenda, we'll let you guys know.
Okay,
And
that'd
it
be
would be
great.
nice to have you attend. It'd be great if we could sit together, they see a face of
Yes.
CDBG.
yes.
So
And
whatever you can do.
Madam Chair, Member Rocha also had asked, always let you know when anything's going to be on council agenda. So I've been trying to be really good about telling you that, whether it's just approving a contract, a bid, something like that, or it's something more, bigger like this. I want to make sure I'm alerting you ahead of time because that's really important that you know what's going on.
And I'm sorry, Madam Chair, one last question.
You have all the time in the world. It's only two people that I keep a little bit of a string on.
Michelle, do you know, or Madam Chair, are you aware, are public comments still a part of the city council meetings that they have?
Member
And if
Miller?
so, how much time is an individual given to address an agenda item on the calendar?
Madam Chair, Member Miller, members of the committee, I have been watching the city council, and typically, they don't have that timer anymore, so it's like usually right around 3 minutes. If it's something really big, like the AVO, I've noticed they give even more time to like the city, like the attorneys will speak for longer. But yes, I've been told that every item, you'll be allowed to speak to it. It's not just like it has to be an official public hearing, that you will be allowed to speak if it's on the agenda.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Madam Chair, but in order to speak for agenda items, you have to fill out a speaker's request. But for public comment, you also can come up before the normal meeting gets started, but also with the speaker request.
And I just want to clarify something, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. I believe the beginning, that call to the public, I believe that the items to speak to at the call to the public are non-agendized.
Right.
So if I want to come in and talk about climate change, it's not on the agenda, I do that at the beginning.
Right.
But if I want to speak to an item that's agendized, I can speak on that. It should be called on by the chair of the committee.
Okay.
And I want to just make one more note. I have a pre-scheduled vacation, October 20th to the 25th. And so it's not because I don't want to be there. I'm going to be there. I'm going to astroplane in from the plane I'm on, but I won't be here on the 25th. But Kirby and George will for sure.
Sounds good. So,
I have a real quick. So when is the information published, like the city council meeting packet for that if it is the 25th? How soon, I know this is kind of a clerk question, but how soon before do we have access to what the packet for the council, what the council is going to discuss at that meeting?
I believe items are due this Friday, because it's like you have to get your items in 2 weeks ahead. Then it goes through all the review. Has to go through, the finance director, the city attorney, the city clerk, your managers and supervisors. So I hope to know by the middle of next week if it's going to go on. But they're legally required to publish so many hours in advance of the meeting. So as soon as we know, we'll let you guys know.
Okay.
All right, so with that, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Madam Chair, I move that we adjourn.
Deb Miller, second.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And-
Oh,
Hi,
man,
Tom.
Tom scared
Any
me.
opposed? Doesn't look like it. We're adjourned.
Thank you. We're adjourned at 2:34.
That's what I've
Thank
got.
you.
Pretty good. Thank you.